I have a dream. I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 5 score years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of the hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames or weathering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negroes still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of the vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corner of American society and found himself an exile in his own hand. And so we've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. I'm happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 5 score years ago, a great American, in whose symbolic shadow we stand today, signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of weathering injustice. This came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negroes still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of the vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and found himself in exile in his own land. And so we've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed, hold this truth to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi, state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis for freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.